Welcome again to another Colors of Prague, the show that has recently been subtitled The Collector's Guide to Progressive Rock Recordings, Past and Present. And hopefully that'll stick. Anyway, without further ado, this is a bit of a tribute to unplanned purchases in the U.S. and other places. There are flea markets. There are what is called stoop sales, which is people sell things in front of their house, in front of their homes, yard sales, and in the UK they're called boot sales. People open up the trunk of their cars and they're full of vinyl albums, or they load them up from their car and put them out for sales. Sometimes you never know what you're going to find. So recently, I had been to one such sale on a very hot day, and I found some items that were not on the list per se, the want list. Everyone has a want list, or a replacement list. Sometimes you had some albums that disappeared. You thought you still had them, or for whatever reason you had traded them off, given them away, whatsoever, and you knew, oh, I really need to find this again, but it was remastered, blah, blah, blah. There's a CD reissue. You never know what you're going to find. So, that being said, out of the gate, we have Esperanto. Crazy cover, and it actually looks like a mid-80s what have you. Here's the band in the back. So Esperanto, Danse Macabre is their second album from 1974. It's an odd international band, including a Belgian, Italian, and Welsh musicians. They worked with songwriter Peter Sinfield, who also produced this. And it's really interesting. Sinfield assigned the lyrics to a vocalist called Glenn Shurock, who was like a member of the band, but sort of like a non-performing member of the band, although he contributed backing vocals. Tony Malasan, Gino Malasan. Tony's on drums, Gino was on bass. They were from Italy. Raymond Vincent was from Belgium. He played violin. Keith Christmas was the lead vocalist. What are they? Godfrey Salmon from England was the second violinist. Tony Harris played viola. He's from England. And Timothy Kramer played cello. He was from England. So the story goes that after Pete Sinfield, who had worked with King Crimson and the Italian band PFM, had heard this band's first album, he really wanted to work with them. So he brought them to Wales, England, and they put them up in a reportedly haunted castle, kid you not, and to work on the band's album for A&M Records. And of course, it was a dead in the water non-seller. There's a lot of violin on here, definitely progressive rock sound going on to it. It's playing in the background. You might be able to hear it pretty low because I had to mix in my voice louder. But this is really a really hard to find album. It was reissued in 2001 with some extra tracks, but to my knowledge, it hasn't had a CD release. I could be wrong. This is Esperanto. And unfortunately, the songs are not sung in Esperanto. The language that was created, that's another story. Another recent find was Kayak. This is a Royal Bed Bouncer, nice gatefold sleeve in English, in pink. And they're a Dutch progressive rock band. This is from 1975, sung in English. This was in, oh, by the way, the Esperanto was in terrific shape. All these were in surprisingly really good shape. So Kayak, this is the third album released in 1975. They are still performing today. They're still together. I believe their most recent album was 2019 or 2020. They're a progressive rock band with pop and rock elements. Well, when you're around for that long, you're going to mix it up a little bit. I kind of like this more than the more recent material. There are a lot of heavy Kayak fans out there. I would say, from what I've heard, that the earlier Kayak albums are really more, what's that term, Prog symphonic, probably due to the lead vocalist Max Werner, or Werner. He also played Mellotron, and Tom Sharpenzel played keyboards, and he also sang. Almost all the musicians in this band sang. So I'm sure there's been some lineup changes over the years, but that was Kayak. Another one of interest was crazy cover. Yes, it's kind of reflective. Moonrider. So Moonrider, I believe is a lone album from them. So why was this interesting? I immediately turned it over. And I saw the name Keith West. And Keith West was in a band called Tomorrow with Steve Howe. That was Steve Howe's pre-Yes band. They had a single, My White Bicycle, I believe, and but the band kind of broke up. Keith West was around the fringes of music for a while, but he didn't actually have a record contract. So he signed to Anchor Records, which definitely had to be an indie in America. This is 1975. It was distributed by ABC Dunhill. And ABC Dunhill handled people like, I believe, the Osmonds and possibly the Partridge Family. So it was kind of weird to be associated with them. Anyway, so as I mentioned, Keith West, lead vocals, rhythm, and acoustic guitar. Chico Greenwood on drums. John Weeder, lead guitar, acoustic guitar, and vocals. And John Weeder came from the one of the lineups of the Animals, Eric Burden and the Animals. Of interest is Bruce Thomas, bass guitar. So is Bruce with the glasses at the end. And so who's Bruce Thomas? He was an original member of Elvis Costello's Attractions. And later, Elvis Costello's Imposters. Yeah, right. So is it prog? No, it's country rock. I would say pretty much of interest to fans of Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Young. I mean, you have Bruce, who later would play with Elvis Costello in the original Attractions, and then later again. So yeah, there's a punk connection there. And Keith West was in the psychedelic proto-progressive band Tomorrow with Steve Howe. But by this time, we're really talking, we're speaking Eagles type sounds. It's quite listenable. It's a great cover. If you're a Keith West collector, it's a nice find. So from there, I happened to come across two Mike Oldfield albums, which usually garner high prices online for whatever reason. Mike Oldfield of Tubular Bells fame. So it was 5 miles out, which has a gatefold sleeve that has the soundboard, breakdown, lead guitar, echo, drums, drums. And the other one was a reissue of Platinum. And that's this. So it was originally released in 1970, I believe 78, 79. And Platinum was originally called Airborn. I'm sorry. It was originally called Airborn. And side one was a suite, Platinum, Airborn, Platinum, Charleston, North Star, etc. Side two with different songs. And he was on tour in 79, Mike Oldfield. And they decided to reissue this a year later on Virgin Records in 1980, and that's where this comes from. Not a gatefold, and I kind of slammed two albums into this one single recording here. And side one is Tubular Bells, part one, the Exorcist theme. If no one is familiar with Tubular Bells, the well-known song theme from The Exorcist, the William Peter Blatty movie. And side four, so side three was Tubular Bells, side four was Incantation Studio and Live, taken from a 1977 tour, and with bits and pieces from 78 and 79, all kind of edited in there. This was produced by Mike Oldfield. It's not the, he's a very, you can't pigeonhole this musician's style if you think he's mainly instrumental and dreamy keyboards and great electric guitar, ambient. He also played around with whatever he wanted to do. So he some of these songs are very rockish, and some of these songs have very Middle Eastern feels. He was interested in world music around this time period. So this was a nice find. So currently it's called Airborn, but this is a reissue of the Platinum album. And in addition, it has, as I said, the Tubular Bells Live and Incantations, which is a mix of different recordings. Nice find. You might find this, who knows, oh, it must have been a Virgin Records promotional. Hence that. And they pulled, it looks like Charleston and North Stars on the playlist for radio, FM, I'm assuming. So, we are going to jump ahead to variations. This is called Moroccan Roll. The back. So, it's a French band made of Moroccan men of Jewish heritage, but the bass player was Italian, and they had very unusual sound. And so somebody decided that Les Variations could be big in America. So they were according to what I read, one of the first French bands to play in the United States. And they supported a lot of American acts in the early 1970s. And this was on Buddha Records. And Buddha Records was one of those labels that people might be familiar from or with that logo, the 1910 Fruit Gum Company. Yes, the 1910 Fruit Gum Company was a very popular band. Simon Says was one of their big songs. And I guess when they came over to America, and they apparently did some very good shows, there was record label interest, but not enough. So they signed to Buddha, which is one of the lower tier American record labels. So what does that sound like? It's very early heavy rock. There are some prog type sounds going on here. I mean, very percussive. It's not heavy rock. They overdubbed some piano and organs in the studio, I'm assuming, on top of everything else. Very hard to find this maraca roll. And in the back photo gives you an idea of like what they look like when they're performing hot shows, right? So about 2 years later, Buddha really tried to make them again in America. So Café de Paris from 1975 was their next album. And they just put out this elaborate gatefold sleeve. And by sheer luck, if you would say that word, I don't even think the guy who was selling this even knew that this was a Buddha promotion package. So we have, this is kind of crazy. You really find things like this. So we had this Variations poster, which is folded. Pardon me. And we have the album itself. And we have a lithograph. And we have 8x10s and the press info. And we have the songs and a lyric sheet. So at some point in time, Buddha really tried to make Les Variations happen in America. And, well, needless to say at this point, it didn't. The band was too eclectic. They were too much in that Deep Purple, almost kind of frenzied rock, you know, like that experimental early Zappa, Hot Rats era. And so how do you promote a band like this? And but they had a lot of great live shows, as I said before, and the reviews you could see of a lot of these live shows were really well done. And it's just like, I mean, all for the label trying to make them happen. The progressive rock connection is tenuous, but it's still there with the overdubbed keyboards. I think probably this is with their last album too, Café de Paris. I think the band really wanted to do something else musically. And I think the record label was trying to make them a happening thing with the heavy rock fans and community. So there were a few more things I picked up. I'm going to save them for another show. I'm going to disperse them with other things. But anyway, so that was like the surprise oddities. I mean, all this stuff is eclectic music. And they all have a connection to progressive music in some way or another. Anyway, that's the show for today. Thank you for listening. Stay well.